Welcome to Getting Real with Josh Boyer, the show that embraces radical vulnerability and authenticity. Josh creates a judgment-free zone for his guests to share openly and candidly. Listen in as they discuss life, philosophy, passion, drive, empowerment, and purpose. Join us as we seek to leave our world better than we found it and send ripples of positive, lasting change out into the world.
There we go. We're recording. So stoked to be here, brother. We're out here in Sierraville. So from the people that have been following my social media and seeing the stuff I've been doing with my podcast, I was out here in July in Sierraville with Shems doing a men's retreat. And I met Shems about 2 years ago, maybe?
Maybe more than that, actually.
Yeah, it probably was more than that, actually. And we, started working together with Kathleen and I. And I was like, man, Shems is an incredible dude. I've always had a hard time connecting with guys. Being like a real, true, authentic connection. I always felt like a disconnect for some reason. And I've been able to bullshit my way through a lot of things, And you were the first one that was able to see through that, see through the pain and see through the shield that I was putting up in front of myself to protect myself from hurt and what a shame and everything else. So Shems reached out to me and said, hey, why don't you come out to this retreat? And I was like, okay, cool. So I came in July, very apprehensive, full of judgments, full of I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how I'm going to relate to these guys, this and that. And it was such a beautiful experience. It was a life changer. Completely shifted my perspective on people, life, myself, everything. And to talk to so many different guys, and we all have a lot of the same pain, a lot of the same shame, a lot of the same hurts and insecurities, and again, be able to share that openly without any judgment was such a freeing experience. And so when I knew you were going to do this retreat in September, I was like, well, I'm obviously coming. We're doing this. So I'm here with Shems in Sierraville again, and this is going to be Shems' turn to share his story with you. And what's fascinating about it is that there's a lot about you there's a lot of stuff I don't know about you. I don't know anything about your personal story, actually, maybe a very little. So this is going to be a learning experience for me as well. So take it away, brother.
Awesome. Well, I'm honored to be here with you, Josh, and I've really appreciated getting to know you and who you are and all that you're choosing to be as a man and learn from and grow with. And so I see that kindred spirit we share of both coming from, I would say, broken families and hardships in life, and then doing what we can to kind of grow and learn from that and make choices and hopefully meet people or be in environments that help us to see what else is possible. Yeah. And that's what I've been blessed with in my life quite a bit.
Totally.
Yeah.
So take it from the beginning. Where were you born? What was your life like? How'd you get into this work?
Yeah, I was born in California, in Belmont, California, which is near San Francisco. Okay. And I spent my first year of my life there with my parents. I'm going to backtrack a little bit because both of my parents were born in Germany.
Oh, okay.
And so it's probably valuable for me to start with where they come from because that had a huge impact from what my life was like.
Yeah.
My father was born during the World War II, and his parents were killed when he was 1.
Oh, wow.
At a very young age. Actually, his father was killed, and then his mom died of an illness within that year. And so he was orphaned at an early age in Germany, and then was taken into by, I think, the police chief, he said, of the town, but he was a very abusive man with his wife and with my father. And then what's interesting is that after 9 years, my father's mother's sister was living in New York City and found out he was still alive somehow and sent a soldier to find him and see if they could find him in the town. And that led to him being brought to the U.S. from Germany at the age of 9, not speaking any English, going through Ellis Island, and then going to boarding school. He never lived with them. So my father had a rough start.
Yeah, also.
And met my mom, who was 12 years younger, and she had an interesting journey too, because my mom was born in Germany, but my mom's mom lost both her parents. They were taken by the Russians at the Polish border of Germany in the war as well. And she's only 10 years older than my father, my mom's mother, my grandmother. Oh, wow. And so from the age of 12 on, she lived barn to barn through the war in Germany and endured a lot of hardship, which many of our families in many places around the world. But it rippled in through the family. And so, and then she had my mother with a sailor who was gone all the time and turned out to be a drunkard and an abusive man. And she had to leave my mom with his mom to go find work, and had to leave my mom for 5 years. So my mom had this wound as well of her mom leaving her with her grandmother in a very poor environment with no food and really just, minimal food and difficult times. And so my parents met, and both of my parents, I feel, carry a lot of trauma and a lot of ways that they can be shut down at times, more my father than my mom. And so I'm born into this, coming into this time in California. And my father had been in the Navy and had huge anger issues and ways that he would attack and out and break things and be very destructive. And so my childhood was basically, I was on guard of when's he going to explode next? When's he going to hit my mom next? And I would bring stuffed animals to my mom because she'd be huddled in the corner crying. And on my memories, I feel sad just thinking of it. My memories are my trying to comfort and soothe my mom because my dad had another episode. Right. So I had a brother 2 years younger than me, and at the age of 6, my mom left in the night with us to get away from my father. And for whatever circumstances and reasons, I ended up going back and living with my father, and my mom and my brother went and lived somewhere else. So that
was your choice, or?
Somehow my father told me if I stayed, my mom would come back, and I didn't want to leave my friends. And I felt sorry for my dad. I remember looking him in the eyes when my mom would come back and we're having this meeting. And I remember looking at my dad, and I felt this, my heart felt for him. I felt this compassion. So I made this choice almost to be the parent, even, at a young age. Yeah. And that catalyzed everything I do now in my life. In some ways, I made this choice to take care of him and endure his life. And so I lived with him then in a town called Pleasanton. We lived the first year of my life in Belmont. Then at the age of 1, my parents bought a house in a suburb outside of San Francisco in the valley there called Pleasanton, which was a small town at the time. And they were able to buy a house, and my dad worked. And so I lived alone in that house with my dad. And then my dad would go to work. I'd come home from school, and I'd be alone in this house. And my dad's also diabetic, type 1, so there wasn't ever enough food in the house. So I was going hungry. I'd be starving, and I'd be looking for food. So I'd get into the bread. I'd eat the whole loaf. He'd get home, and he would be massively raging at me for, again, eating too much of the food because he was very frugal financially. Right. So that set the stage for me for a lot of difficulties in my life. Learning disabilities, was not thriving in school, couldn't memorize very well, couldn't figure things out. I was so emotionally distressed a lot of times. Yeah. And then fortunately at the same time, we had family friends who were healthier, in some ways second parents in a little bit. And I'd go over there and get all the food I wanted, get some attention. I'd go play sports and play basketball all day. All day long we'd be outside creating games. And so for me, that was the avenue for me to feel okay about the world and life, was the basketball court or the wherever we were playing, whether that was climbing in the creeks. And that friendship and those family things gave me just enough of goodness in life for me to be able to endure what was going on with my dad. Yeah. So let me add in that my father also could be wonderful. And we would go out to the mountains and we'd go camping and we'd go biking. And he was in these hike and bike clubs. So my father also had a really wonderful, charming side as well. And so there'd be moments when I have a great time with him, and he had a dozen girlfriends through my childhood. The relationships never lasted, but I got to meet a lot of people and go, and we were always on these outings on the weekends to go camp or bike I'd go with him wine tasting and bike. Even at the age of 10, I'd do these long bike rides with him in a group, and they'd all be getting drunk on wine, and I'd be riding around watching guys wavering on their bikes and wondering what was going on. And so I had a lot of blessings along with it, but then again, I was always on alert for when is the next challenge. So at the age of around 12, I was throwing a Nerf football and my bone shattered in my arm, my humerus bone. I was so malnutritioned from microwave food, from not enough good oils, from marjoram, from bad milk, from who knows what else. So I was deficient. So not only did I learn disabilities probably because of emotions, I was also food-wise, I was on the standard diet, right? Wow. Cheerios, bad milk, no good oils. Things like that. So my bone shattered, and it happened while I was visiting my mom, which I went back and forth to my mom. My mom remarried a stepfather who was from Minnesota and the opposite of my dad. A lot, real internal, real quiet. And at that point, I ended up living with my mom for a year because of recovering, and I started to fight my dad. I started to speak up and fight back with him, and I couldn't handle that anymore, him being so intense and impressive. and I was totally flailing through school, like really having a lot of troubles, like getting by, barely getting C's and D's, and then I lived with my mom. All of a sudden, I had all this food and nourishment. She'd make me 2 lunches, and I'd have more food. And the challenge was that my brother was 2 years younger than I, and I would do to my brother what my dad did to me. I would like vibe my brother, and I would want him to play and connect with me and go play basketball, and he didn't want to play any sports. He wanted to hang out in his room all day and play Legos, and I just couldn't resonate with him, so I'd be hard on him. I'd go back and forth between warm and friendly big brother, cold, angry, judgmental big brother. And that was really hard for my family and for my mom and for me, so I ended up having to move back with my dad for a while. And then it got really bad, where like I was just struggling and fighting my dad, and I ran away a few times, like, and just like went off and hid in the woods for a couple days. And then it was like, okay, this is getting bad. Police had to come find me, and like, all right. So I'm moving with my mom again, and had a new chapter. And so I basically, from 8th grade on in high school, I started to grow and blossom in myself a little bit more with food and school. And I fortunately got into playing water polo and swimming.
Nice. And
I was really good. So I had a coach that had just had one of the previous players go to the Olympics after me. So my first year in high school, he put me as the varsity starting goalie in high school, which was like this huge boost for my ego in a good way. Like, gave me something to feel a little bit of pride about, or a little confidence, or a little skill in, and he was such a good man. He would sit me down before a game and help me visualize like myself. I was the goalie blocking shots, and he helped me learn some things. He was like a first mentor that took me under his wing and felt like he cared about me. And I felt like I didn't have a lot of that, other than a few people around my father or that were sensitive. He touched something in me that like lit a spark. That had me feel a little more confident, trusting. And from there, I started to just come out and blossom a little bit more into a young man who had a little more capacity in the world. School started getting better. I started surfing and riding waves at that time. And fortunately, my mom, even my stepdad, said, no, he can't do that. He should be out in the ocean. Why he should be in church with us? And I hated going to church, you know. I hated what was going on in the church environment, and listening to these, like, it's almost like I could see right through sometimes some of the pastors and stuff. Or I'd go to Sunday school with the kids of the pastors, and they would be the ones doing the worst stuff. Like,
outside of church.
Like going out and sneaking out, and then like having alcohol Sunday morning. And I was like, are you kidding me? You're the son of the pastor. And to me, I was like, there's something really wrong here.
Totally.
And my mom gave me the blessing to go surfing inside of church.
That's awesome.
Which was unbelievable, actually.
It's healthy too, because I think a lot of us, I know for me, like my mom was, church was like her saving grace, I guess. You know, she was like floundering for so long, and then she found something she belonged to, and she just went all in with it. So with that, obviously we were, we had to go along for the ride, you know, so it was a lot of just fanatical stuff, you know, like any movies that were above PG, it's like, no, you're not watching a PG movie. That's the devil. Christian music only. Just a lot of the programming was really jacked up, you know. My grandma used to call me a Bible-toting evangelist, you know, because I used to carry my Bible with me, and like I felt that if you didn't believe the way that I did, you were going to hell. You had to believe the way that I did, or you're going to go to hell, and that's what I was being taught. And then I got older, and I kind of rebelled against that, because I was like, man, this is terrible. Like, I don't like it. Like my bus driver, for example, going to school, her daughter actually just hit me up out of nowhere the other day and was like, hey, you remember my mom? She used to be your bus driver. Anyway, she was a Jehovah's Witness. And we used to talk, and we'd have these long talks about Christianity and religion and this and that. And it wasn't from a place of like judgment or anything, but I remember being like scared for her in a way. Like, oh, she doesn't believe the way that I do. Does this mean like she's going to go to hell? So it started like waking up in me, and I was asking my stepfather, like, so you mean to tell me that the Dalai Lama, because he doesn't believe the way that I do, he's going to go to hell? He's one of the most peaceful people on earth, you know, like really? Like Mother Teresa? Like, and there was no answers for that. It's like, oh, it's just one of the mysteries of the church. I'm out. Yeah, for that reason, I'm out.
That's one of the things I didn't like too. My stepfather was the accountant for the church, so they were pretty entwined in it.
Yeah.
And he was similar to your family. He was like, no MTV. No music videos, no long hair, no, like he had a lot of things, but he has a very good heart about it, but there was a lot of strict rules around it, which were fascinating. But I felt there was there was some gold in it, really good people and connections,
Totally.
but there was a lot of hypocrisy that happened within it. And it was almost like, as a kid, kids are like this, which is a beautiful thing, is that we can feel sincerity or not.
Yeah.
And there's just no doubt, there's no arguing that. Like, I could feel like some of these people are putting on a smile, and below that smile is a bunch of pain and hurt and judgments, and I can see it in their eyes and I can feel it.
Yeah.
And so there's these conversations, and there's this conversation below the conversations. And for me in church, that drove me crazy.
Yeah.
One thing's being said, but then there's this other conversation sometimes between people of like criticism, judgment, you're not quite doing it right. But then there's this surface conversation. And that part, I went to a few different churches because I sang in choir in Sunday school with my dad. So I have to say I went to church young too, and I had a lot of good experiences.
Yeah.
I was in choirs. We'd do these weekend camp outs. So I got great experiences. But for the most part, I felt a lot of things off.
Yeah, it's very fear-based. I mean, it was for me anyway, a lot of judgments. And I remember specifically when it was like about to be like done for me, I was like, I'm about to be done with this. Like, I don't want to go anymore. My parents weren't going to make me go anymore. There was a guy that went to the church that was like one of the most amazing humans. He was a good guy, He had a drinking problem. Okay, he had a drinking problem, but he was trying. He was trying to better himself. He was trying to be a better person. He was looking for connections with people. And I would see people in the church go up to him and be like, oh, how you doing, Johnny? And then there'd be like a little pause as far as you're drinking. And it's like, you assholes, like, come on, man. And so I remember my stepfather said something. He was like, who are we to judge? Like, here we are, all these men in this church, all overweight, every single one of them, not one of them is a pillar of like fitness and health. And so we're guilty of overeating and indulging, and not, being kind to our temple. And then we're going to judge this man. And I remember that was a good lesson that I learned, that in all of that hypocrisy and judgment, my stepdad came through with like something that really stuck with me. And I was like, you know what? That's not something I want to be a part of anymore. And I went through a lot of anger as a result. Like I felt cheated that I was like exposed to like that fanatical type of Christianity. And I was like, man, I could have been so much more open to things. I saw my friends, with the long hair and just, they just felt free and they were just doing their own thing and figuring the world out on their own. They didn't have like a programming telling them the way the world works. They had to think for themselves. And I felt cheated for a long time. So anytime anybody would bring up Christianity or church, I was like, yeah, fuck that. No, not for me.
Can you
and now
feel your strength in that when you say that? There was a real strong resistance to it.
Oh yeah. I was like, nah, I don't want any part of that. Get it away from me. And now I come from a place of like, that's cool. Like, you do you, like if that's what you're into, totally.
Yeah.
My mother-in-law's really into it, and we just don't talk about it. It's not something that really gets brought up. It did in the beginning of my relationship with her daughter, but kind of like, what are we going to do with the grandkids type thing? But not anymore. It's like, no, we're good. It's a healthy respect. Like, you do your thing, we'll do ours. And
I was fortunate to, in my early 20s, meet the Sufi community where we did this thing called Dances of Universal Peace. Yeah. And that for me was the most beautiful experience of spirituality, where it's like there were people who were Buddhists or Christian, or they were Judaist, or they were Jewish in that sense, and it felt like it was this collection of people that were meeting over one principle, which is connection, song, praise, and seeing that all paths have a golden thread in them of truth to God. And then all paths have some differences, distinctions, judgments, rules that may not be the most highest evolved aspect of them, and are based sometimes on what was needed at one point maybe, and yet got held on to a little longer than needed and isn't really serving what's needed now. And so the Sufis have this way of seeing the world of basically the biggest illusion is the differences and distinctions that divide us. Whether we have dark skin or light skin, we have red blood.
Right.
And like we meet there, we both have red blood, and we both have red blood that requires oxygen, water, food, and love to thrive. And so if I can see that in you, and I can realize that that's the place where we meet, and I can honor that in you and feel that to me, that started to open the sense of, wait a minute here, I don't want to start looking at the surface and get caught seeing color differences, cultural differences, all these things, because really there's this bridge between everyone that is not crossed enough.
Yep.
And it took me a lot to get to that place of really realizing that's what we're doing. If we're really doing the work on the world, we're learning to cross that bridge.
Totally. I have guys in the military that really is where that came alive for me, because when you grow up in a neighborhood where it's tribal, it's very it's like mostly like the neighborhood I was in was mostly Caucasian with some Asian people sprinkled in, and you're in your little bubble. You don't really get outside of that. We had like one one black person on our football team, maybe two. And you could tell like the pain of like them not being like one of the white guys, you know. There was a couple comments by one of the Asian guys that played football with us. He was part of our little crew. It's like, you know, I wish I was white. I was like, don't ever say that again. That's terrible, you know. And I didn't really wake up to that, you know, having that we all have red blood thing until I went into the military and realized I was like, wow, these are like my brothers. I would do anything for them, anything, up to and including giving my life for them. And it really changed the dynamic of like even my relationships back home, because I was like, I came home and it was like, I don't identify with some of the things that you guys identify with. I'm just not that way, you know, like at all. I felt like like an oddball, but it's such an amazing experience when you can connect with somebody on that level. I don't care what you look like. I don't care what your skin color is. Like, it means nothing. It means nothing at all. It's what's on the inside that matters, you know?
Yeah, and maybe you're speaking to one of the most golden parts about, you know, being in the military or the Air Force is there's this common bond that we do together that allows us to accept each other more fully.
Totally.
Because we're on a similar path right now. Because of that, a lot of the other things that may interrupt that.
Yeah.
You know, I had an interesting experience going to high school. I was in San Mateo High School, which is very diverse.
Yeah.
There was Tongans, there was a lot of Hispanic, there were a lot of Asians moving into California at that time from both Japan and China and Hong Kong. And so it was very multicultural. Yeah. You know, and I actually used to really wish I was black because I played basketball and I never was as good as some of the bros I'd play basketball with who were just, to me, not only like great players, but really good men. I was around men. I was like, I like hanging with you guys. And actually the bond between a lot of black men that I was around playing basketball with was so close, and I couldn't get in. Yeah. Like I wasn't in with them. And so I had this reverse experience of like, I want to be with these guys. Like I like what these guys are doing. I like who they are. I like how relaxed they are. I like how confident they are. I like how phenomenally good they are. And mostly I like their brotherhood. Yeah. That I was like, we don't get that. The white guys didn't have that as much. And so for me, I had these interesting experiences of being in a diverse culture and also going to parties and seeing the other side of that, where there was these weird things. There'd be these wealthy white guys who had homes and neighborhoods near our school that were the wealthier class. They'd have a party and there'd be this different energetic where there was this white kind of thing going on. I was like, this doesn't feel good. I don't like this, you know? Yeah. And then I'd go down to other gatherings where I didn't feel safe. And I remember one night I was at a party and like I got beaten up by a pool stick. You know, these guys came from, there was like 5 high schools in the area I was in the Bay Area. Yeah. And so there was a lot of competition. So they would hear about a party and guys would show up, and sometimes we're out in the streets and there was kegs and drinking, and some guys pulled up and about 5 of us got beat pretty bad. I got hit with a pool stick, and because I was tall and long, I stood out. Yeah. And so I got worked pretty good that one. That one's one of those times I was like, oh man, that was humbling.
Yeah. It's crazy. Like for me, someone asked me one time, like, would you be okay like going down to like, you know, a bad neighborhood, you know, where it's predominantly like African American or whatever? Yeah, I feel totally comfortable. I really would. That was the first, one of the best compliments I ever got actually was this girl, Tessa Brown. And I hope she listens to this. We were in the military together, and it's very weird. Like people are very particular about their uniform, right? I don't let anybody touch my uniform. Don't touch my boots. Don't touch my uniform. I want it perfect, so I do it. Well, Tessa was really good at doing uniforms. So and we worked opposite schedules. So she would iron my uniform for me. She would shine my boots, and I'd do the same for her. So when she was off, she could just be off and not have to worry about it. I would do it for her because it just made sense. Anyway, one of the things she told me was that you're one of the only white guys I know that I could take to a family reunion. You'd fit right in. I was like, yes, really cool. And some of my best friends that I ever met were black when I was in the military. Mm-hmm. And the most authentic connections, you know, and there was I can call any of them to this day and be like, hey man, I love you, dude. Can we like connect? You know, can you meet me here? I need this or need that. And they're there in a heartbeat, you know, it's amazing. It's a great experience.
Yeah. And there's not enough people in our culture get to live in more of a multiculturally balanced environment, you know, and I have a similar experience I lived in Santa Barbara for a long time, and I used to work a lot with guys I'd pick up on the wall, Hispanic guys who had migrated from Mexico. And these guys were some of my favorite guys to hang out with because they were so real and authentic and sincere. And then they outworked me every time. Yeah. As far as like we're digging holes, and I'd work with these guys, and I was like, wow, like I just feel like this respect. But also then we'd go to a barbecue with them and their family, and there'd be such closeness between everybody. And it wasn't always, you know, best language or the best,
Yeah.
things going on. But for the most part, the bond between people, I think most cultures have that better than the white culture.
Totally.
Which is very interesting to me. Like the
Yeah.
bond, the closeness, the realness, the authenticity, the allowing of expression and emotions and everything. Sometimes it's just there's more permission.
I think we're missing that a lot in white culture, if you will, or American culture, whatever you want to call it. I was talking to Paulo about that. How like you go to your home and you just close your garage, you park your car in the garage, you close the garage, you go in your box, and you never even speak to anybody outside of your little circle. It's like, man, that's crazy. Like, what happened to community? What happened to like connecting with people? And I think there's a lot of people, myself included, that are missing that connection where it's like, no, I want that connection with people. I want to connect with, like, have like that tight knit where there's emotion and there's this, and you can just be free to do whatever, It's very stuffy and rigid and everyone's just in their own little worlds. And it feels sad to me, it's like, wow. And that's kind of what I've always wanted to create. Like, I think that's why having so many kids, I would have had 12 if Kathleen would have been down with it.
Wow.
And I think that was partly why, is that I wanted to create this huge family where it's like, it's our huge tribe and we all get together and we take care of one another. And we, are always getting together on the weekends. We care about what's going on with one another. We look after each other. And so now I'm going to create that with the family I have. I don't have 12 kids, but close.
Beautiful.
Yeah, for sure. So how did you get into doing like men's work? So you were doing working with the Sufis, and how'd that transition?
Well,
like, where'd you go from that?
The steps were that I ended up being in college in Santa Cruz, and I got into Qigong and martial arts and yoga, and those things were really good for me. And I was still surfing, and I got really into that, and I got really into backpacking, going out deep in nature. Yeah. And then I got involved with doing multiple different men's groups. I did Mankind Project. I did different other ones that aren't well known, where we did circles in Santa Cruz. And then I moved to Humboldt and went to college at Humboldt State University and was living up there. And I had some men's circles up there, and a friend invited me up to Canada, and I went up to Canada. We did this road trip from Humboldt to this island in Kamloops, where these two rivers came together, and this guy owned this island. And there was this group of men from the Karaka tribe in New Zealand. And they weren't necessarily only a tribe, but they were a tribe of community of men and women, but they had this annual men's gathering between men from Canada and some men from the U.S. and a lot of men from New Zealand that came and led it. And these were led by guys that were like doctors. And I was 21 at the time, and I went to this, and it was a week-long camp out. And it was intense. Like they were bringing in a lot of like edgy, powerful stuff of like one guy would dress and wear a mask, and he'd come and we'd be out in the woods, and he would like bring out the shadow character of like the guy that was going to attack you, and you'd need to meet him and physically find your strength to wrestle with this guy or face that. And it created all these experiences, and most of the time, like I was experiencing layers of fear and insecurity in me that were like I couldn't quite get through. There were some breakthroughs for me, but my judgment of myself was that I failed that experience. And that probably wouldn't be the judgment of the men who were leading it, but my internal voice and internal experience was like I couldn't stay up all night. I felt like I was getting sick, so I went to sleep, and a couple guys called me out like, hey, how are you going to show up in your life if you can't stay up all night with us right now? Wow. And I chose to take care of myself, and because I didn't want to get sick, I was getting a sore throat, and I like went to sleep at 2 a.m. or something instead of staying up all night and doing the vigil. And man, I judged myself for years after that as being not good enough, not really willing to be a man, not really a man's man. Like I chose self-care over that. So that left some big things in me, and so I continued to do men's work with that, including Mankind Project. And then what happened was I got involved in Boys to Men in Santa Barbara, and I liked Mankind Project. There were some good things about it, but there were things I didn't like about it. I got involved in Boys to Men, and I was leading with other men of all different ages, taking these boys from the inner city and different places and taking them out to the woods for a week. And that was phenomenal for me, because the principles of it, though, were to love, accept, and admire these young men, to give them, in some ways, a nutrition and a nutrient that they're not getting from men in their lives. Yeah. And to create an environment for them to be challenged, to tell their stories. Like there was this game called Balls of Truth, and so we'd have a diversity of kids. We'd say, all right, we want you to put a ball in the circle, and we want you to tell a truth that happened to you in your life. And we want the size of the ball to represent how deep of a share this is. So one of the boys picks up a huge ball, and it's like, I watched was that I watched my uncle kill my brother.
Oh, wow.
And like, you know, the whole room dropped to this whole level. And like, I think half the men started crying, you know, and the boys were just like, we're looking at this boy and like, all of us were kind of stumped for a moment, like, yeah, okay. And then we all rose in to meet him and put a hand on him and be with him while he started to shake and grieve this and move this through him. And in that moment, I was like, oh, this is the work.
Yeah.
How do we create a safe space for some of this stuff to get processed out, but to get processed out in a loving way that's not like, oh, you're going to be okay, but more like, wow, we're with you. Wow, you endured that. You have that inside of you. Thanks for bringing that out to us. So for me, that planted a seed. And I also was very fortunate. I was with a partner for 12 years, and she was a workshop junkie, I'll say. Because I wanted to surf and play music and do my life. And I became a Chinese doctor as well. So I went to acupuncture school. So along this realm, I got into medicine and healing work. And a big factor in all this, too, is I had a healthy man who you got to meet, Dale, who became a mentor. Human. Yeah. I met him because a road was closed going to Humboldt, and because there was such a rain, it had flooded the highways 101 going north. I got stuck in a small town called Fortuna. So I went and hung out with him at his health food store, and we kind of created a father-son relationship, like a spiritual father-son. He never had kids, and he taught me acupuncture and healing, and it led me going to acupuncture school. But also there was this relationship with him where we both gifted each other some gold in the sense of what we were each needing for our lives to feel more fulfilled. And for me to have a man see me and honor me and give me some gifts. And he taught me body work and walking on people with my feet and doing barefoot shiatsu. And I made my living doing that and paid for myself to go through acupuncture school by doing tons of massage, lots of work on people and teaching at massage schools. And so after I finished acupuncture school, we started working with Gay and Katie Hendricks, my partner and I. We did this workshop with them, and it led to 3 years mentoring and apprenticing with them in this program they have called the Leadership Training. And if anybody knows who Gay and Katie Hendricks are, they have like 30 books on conscious relationship skills, radical responsibility. Gay's famous books are like The Big Leap. Anyway, we did work with them, and that was transformational. I'd be in these 10-day retreats, 5-day retreats, and for years we were doing these workshops with them. And for me, I was learning that I had all these protective defense mechanisms that didn't allow me to let love in. Or that I would just be shoring up my ego so I felt safe, and that my safety and security was outside of me. I had it on how someone thought about me, whether they liked me, whether I was a cool surfer, acupuncturist guy. My image, my identity, who I thought I was usually I was looking for how people saw it outside of me. Yeah. And I learned to start rewiring that and going, wait a minute here, like that's going to be sourced inside of me. It's never going to come from someone else. Yeah. And breaking down on that illusion meant like breaking down a whole bunch of basically false safety mechanisms. And that had me understand men's work and relationships a lot, because one of the reasons that most of us suffer in relationships is that we've got these thresholds of blocks of really letting love in because we don't feel worthy of it, or we feel like our partner's delivering some judgment or criticism about us, and we've got all these blocks of it because we think they can't love us and have a judgment of us at the same time. Right. And if they have a judgment of us, then that means they don't really love and care about us. And we have all these basically miswires entangled in a lot of us because of our culture, because of the history of European culture and humanity, whatever it is. And I started to unwind that stuff in myself, and I realized that even though I've been pretty much an open-hearted, good man, I've had so many protective mechanisms that have stopped me from feeling and appreciating and loving life. And even I'd be surfing, I'd still be complaining because the waves weren't good enough, because there was these places inside of me that were still looking for something outside of me to make me feel okay. Right. And we can do that through alcohol, we can do that through sports, we can do that through food, we can do that through relationships, looking for the next lover. And a lot of us just are miswired in that, and we're living our lives in that. And as a man, I realized like, whoa, that's the initiation. That's what a young boy goes through. When I did a lot of sweat lodge, prayer ceremony work, really like the native tradition, and I was like, wow, the First Nations native tradition really knew this. They took a young boy out and they made him find his strength inside by putting him in the wilderness and honoring him for the journey and the strength he had to find inside to know himself. Yeah. And most of us men, we don't have that. We're still looking for the world to validate who we are. So we think if we make enough money and have a big enough business, we're successful. We think that if we are a really good doctor or whatever we do, we're still trying to prove to our father or to some teacher that judge us when we're young, or our older brother. Yeah. Instead of really finding and loving and discovering who am I? Who is the essence of a man or a woman or a being that I am now that's not unchanging? No matter what skills I have, whether I can play music, none of that matters because I don't get to take any of that with me when I die.
Yeah.
What I do take with me is the essence of the being I was when I was born and when I leave. And I can improve all kinds of personalities and all kinds of things, but on some level, the essence of you and the essence of me is unchanging. And can I know that, love that, and value that enough to live my life fully? And to me, that's the work that I think a lot of us don't get to do. And I was fortunate to have some environments that helped me rewire that.
Right.
And so that, to me, that's what the men's work's about too.
That's incredible. I think that, I told you how powerful that last retreat was because there was a lot of things like I was realizing about myself, like thinking that just the idea of what a man even was, the idea of what I thought you needed to be like be a man, you need to be tough, like mindset's everything. Don't be a pussy, that's, I think some of that can be healthy. It's got me through a lot of hard stuff in my life, just by like the grit and determination and relentless like pursuit of whatever it was I was trying to accomplish. But underneath all of that was a lot of insecurity, a lot of pain, a lot of like, just doubt and wanting to be accepted and wanting to be loved and feeling like kind of like the oddball, So coming to that retreat really opened that up for me, being like, I need to find a way to just love who Josh Boyer is. And that's it. Like, I don't need to prove myself to anybody. Mm-hmm. And even to my father, like that was a big thing for me. And I didn't realize that even as a 30-something-year-old guy, it dawned on me one day. I was like, dude, I'm still trying to prove stuff to my dad. Wow. I just wanted him for once, like one time in my life to be like, I'm proud of you. I was like looking for that. And he actually said it like maybe a year and a half ago, but it had already lost its luster a little bit. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like, I appreciate it, but like it wasn't what I was searching for at that time. So I was like, okay, cool. I got what I was looking for. But for so many years, that's what I was looking for. Even in the way I played football, even in the way I did, it's like, getting MVP and doing this and that. And like, I wanted to just create something that like, he would be like, and another part of it was he wasn't around much. So I think there was a part of me that was like, look what you're missing. Look what I'm doing. And you're missing all of it, And I was like, wow, why was I doing that? For what? And it feels like the way you just explained it sounds like freedom to me. To have it in yourself where you're not looking at from anybody else, like any validation from anybody, your partner, your coworkers, like anybody, friends. There's so much like healthiness in that. And it's like, and you emanate that. Like when I walk around with you or whatever, just the way you walk, the way you talk, the way you look, you're not saying anything. There's just power in that. And people feel it. They feel that, when you truly step into your essence, So that's what I got from the last retreat for sure. Yeah. And I'm looking forward to getting at this one too.
This is good. And I want to highlight some because we don't discover this on our own by hanging out, meditating in a cave and being spiritually polarized either. Yeah. There's, and we do need it through our friendships, through our community, through environments where we get to relax around that. Yeah. And you sped something really powerful about, the warrior in the world is needed, right? Unfortunately, a lot of us become warriors, whether that's the best athlete in the world or a warrior on the front line, in the military. Usually it's coming more from fear and needing to prove something rather than mission and passion and like, something I'm so committed to that I know the warrior needs to meet the world from that.
Right.
And so there's a real healthy thing for us to be, badass like chargers in the world. And we're always going to have that in the world. Totally. And sometimes it just comes from the wrong place. It comes from looking for some validation because there's a hole inside or a wound or a tender place that we're not willing to look at. And so, the real evolution of a warrior is this inner world of how do I look at the place I don't want to feel? How do I learn to do the work on the battlefield or on the front line or on the game, in the field to play? Yep. But I also, every single one of us, whether we're going up to bat or not, we still face this dragon inside of like, am I good enough? Am I ever going to be enough? Or like, what's wrong with me? And there's a lot of these core beliefs of I'm never going to be good enough or there's never going to be enough in the world. Yep. Right? And so then men end up hoarding and looking to protect and guard that versus go into face that inside. Of like, where do I what am I hiding from in myself? What am I not willing to feel, to look at, to face, to confront? And I like to create environments where we get to do that together as men, not just on our own out, in a meditative practice or climbing mountains, which is great, but also that we get to be around men where I get to go, wow, you're meeting me with so much presence and you're seeing me so fully. Am I willing to see me that fully?
Right. It's powerful. It really is, and I shared that with Paulo in the kitchen. We were talking about guys going to the military and stuff like this. And I was like, to be honest with you, most of those guys that I've talked to, and I'm not saying everyone, most people that join the military, it's because they're running away or trying to prove something. The patriotism and all that other stuff doesn't come till after. Mm-hmm. That becomes like an indoctrination type of thing. You know what I mean? And it's something that when you're on the battlefield or when you're with your brothers and you're in the thick of things, that's when that camaraderie and that brotherhood really starts coming alive. But before all that, like, what was before that? And if you ask like a lot of people that went into the military, a lot of them were just looking for an escape. Mm-hmm. They had terrible upbringings. A lot of, like, you don't see recruiting stations in Beverly Hills. You just don't. That's not where they are. They're outside of junior colleges. They're in like poor neighborhoods, because people are looking for a way out. And the military is looking for people that they can shape and mold into what they, into good, healthy fighting machines, But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Underneath all of that, there is I struggle with that a little bit, where I wanted to be this powerful, strong, courageous man, but at the same time, I want to be able to like own the soft side of me, and be able to like embrace things that are like important to me. And I think there were so many blocks. You said it beautifully. Like, I wasn't allowing like love in at all. I was like so closed off to a lot of things, and like I was so mission oriented. Like, I was trying to accomplish so many things that I was missing all the juice on the other side, like completely. And it's something that I'm still exploring. Like, I was afraid of allowing myself to be just present, allow myself to be like in the essence of who I am. I felt like that was letting my guard down too much. I was like, oh, what's going to happen if I do that? I don't want to get too soft, but I don't think it's about being soft. I think it's about being open.
I agree. And I see a lot of gold in the military, because it does take folks who come from broken families or situations that weren't really healthy. And then there is some brotherhood, some bonding, some alignment, even that for men and women. And there's a lot that could be brought into even another level, because there's so much respect for your lieutenant or your captain or someone. And there's some wonderful steps to take. But you're right. It also, unfortunately, this happens in men's work too, is it gets too military polarized, which means there's too much like, are you going to be a fucking man? When are you going to man up? You know, and there's this certain energy there where there's still this reinforcement, and there isn't enough breathing room for processing grief or trauma or seeing your best mate shot on the field next to you. And like, how do you digest that? And having some warmth and some permission to look a man in the eyes and go, man, I can imagine how much you're hurting right now. And I'll meet you there too. And let's have some healthy digestion of that too. And that, if we could bring that into the military, not a lot of other things have to change, right? Because there's a lot of quality things of development on so many levels, but it just could be enriched with more balance, which hopefully we're doing. And most men don't have this other balance, right?
Yeah. And I think that's where you see a lot of the guys that are suffering right now, that are coming back from war. That's where a lot of suffering is coming from. They feel lost. They feel like they have nobody they can turn to really like be authentically like vulnerable with. And I think you're starting to see a shift in that community. Mm-hmm. I think there's enough people like myself and other guys that are like really opening up and being like, drop the shield, man. Like, but that's a facade, like, I get it. Like, there's a time and place for that. Definitely. Mm-hmm. There's a time and place to meet people from that place where it's like, it's aggression and it's violence and you got to do it. It's part of your job. But there's also another side of that. Like when you lose one of your best mates and it's like, how do you process that? Oh, you just move on? That's it? No, come on, man. Like that, you're hurting inside. I know you are. And just kind of like getting real with each other, getting real with one another. And there's been a couple podcasts that I've done with ex-special operators that you can feel it, that they're starting to open up a little bit more, and be like, okay, yeah, like sharing stories. And it's like, wow, it's painful. Like, and even them sharing those stories, you see them getting choked up and tearing up. And that was the other thing for me, that I was like afraid to show emotion. Mm-hmm. I was afraid to let things out, like, I was listening to a song with Kathleen the other day and I started getting teary eyed. She looks over at me. She's like, you getting teary eyed over this song? I was like, yeah, it's really weird, So it's the freedom, I guess, or the freedom to just be who you are and let your emotions flow, you know. And I think after doing this last retreat, it felt like a cap had been removed. Like there was nothing that, like, I was trying to talk to a therapist that Kathleen and I go to. I couldn't even get my words out because I was so choked up. And part of that was there was like this bottle, this container that was being held like so tight with so much pressure and so much like responsibility and all these other things that I wasn't allowing myself to like feel. I didn't even know what feeling felt like anymore. And coming to this retreat was like, oh wow, this is what it feels like to feel again. Wow. And then I went home from it, and it was like, I'd say a good 2 or 3 weeks of still processing a lot of the stuff, you know? And it feels good. It feels healthy. Like where I can now like have things that come into my awareness, because there's like an integration process, right? When you do this work, you go back into real life, you're going to meet real people that are going to have real challenges, and you're going to need to know how to meet that. And really ask yourself, where are you meeting people from? From the wounded child, the one that's like really wounded and scared and insecure? Or are you meeting people from like a place of confidence, a place of love and compassion and non-judgment? And I shared with you that I was really nervous about the podcast that I did with the big entrepreneur. Was really nervous about it. I wasn't sure how that was going to go. And one of the things you said to me was like, you have a lot of gifts to bring too. Don't forget that. And I was like, all right. And I went there with like such an open heart and like it's so ready to go, fired up. Like I wasn't nervous at all, not in the slightest.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really good. That was good. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Totally.
Well, you know, bring this to men's work again. This is great because you're sharing something that's really juicy, and that, you know, I didn't ever really imagine myself doing men's work.
Really?
My judgment is that I'm not the kind of man who should do men's work, because I'm not this badass man who's like, you know, super fit and powerful. Well, maybe I am in some ways fit and powerful in my body, but for the most
I
part,
saw you out in the field when we were doing the animal work, and people were trying to wrestle with you and stuff like that, and the way you were handling it. Now you have some power to you for sure.
Just never thought myself as a man. So I had people ask me, like, I would do all these couples work, right? And that's been my specialty, is relationship skills, because I feel like that's the leading edge of the evolution of humanity, is to relate really well and to thrive in our relationships. And I'd have these wives pull me aside and go, can you like do men's work or like lead something so that like my man could be a bit more like you, or learn to do kind of what you do and how you meet these situations? Like, and why I bring this back is that, you know, you spoke into emotions and like being able to kind of feel and have access to them. And one of the challenges is we live in this culture where we bottle up a lot and we build up this fizz or this static. And so when we finally feel, it's this, you know, storm or this eruption of emotion. And for men, it's often an eruption of anger that we've been holding back, and resistance and frustration and build up of that. When we're really healthy and we're more balanced, emotions come in these waves that last for a couple minutes max. And why a lot of men, I think, resist, you know, their partner feeling so much, or that thing of like, why is she feeling again? Or why was something, is that there's this thing called a trauma feedback emotional loop. And a lot of what we think of emotionality is someone who's having a wave of emotions, and then a big thought about why they feel that, where it's coming from, and then another wave, and then another thought, and another wave. And basically the emotions are this endless wheel that keeps us in the mud or in the storm, versus this feeling of emotional wave, and then honoring, and then back to center like a child does. Like they have a tantrum, and then 10 minutes later they're laughing and playing and running. And if we could return back to this permission that I can have a wave of grief or sadness or elation or joy or even frustration with you. I could be angry with you, Josh, right now and be like, this doesn't feel good and I'm not into this. And at the next moment I could put my hand on you and appreciate you for letting me just say that and hear it. And not carry it forward, not carry some judgment, and have it just be a clean exchange of clarity and on there, you know, in a certain sense. And that's where we're moving to as men, is creating a space where, you know, your grief is welcome, your fear is welcome. We're not here to like avoid fear or try to be stronger than fear, but like, wow, I feel some fear. And at the same time, I'm excited. I'm lit up. There's a lot of energy in that fear before I jump off the racetrack or whatever it is actually some incredible fuel. If I learn to welcome and make friends with that energy, but not have it be something that overwhelms me. Yeah.
I think a lot what's happening for myself is like I was taking ownership of everything. So you have like your partner will come with you with a wave of emotion or whatever it is, and you take complete ownership of all of it. And you try and shoulder it on. It's like, that's not really your responsibility, you know?
More than 100% responsibility.
Right. And on top of that, it's like, you taking it personally, you know, it's like, now I'm taking it personally. Like you're attacking me now. So my natural defense is to attack back, like because I'm feeling attacked. Yep. And then you get in that cycle of like just aggression and anger and hurt, and then you leave it and you're like, dude, I'm completely unresolved. And you shared something with me a couple weeks back where you said like a true man should be able to hold a lot of the grief and the pain and the love at the same time and meet it in the middle, and the circles intersect internally. And so I really, truly like honor that and tell myself that whenever I'm having like a conversation with my wife or with somebody else, like there'll be times where I'm triggered by it, where it's like, something you're saying right now is really triggering something in me, but I'm not going to be reactive. I'm not going to say something that's retarded or like that's completely off base. I'm just going to hear you out, and then meet you from a place of non-judgment. I can share what I feel, and you're entitled to share how you feel, and that's totally cool. Yeah, so it's been a healthy like shift. Yeah, for sure.
To me, that's the missing link in our culture of a healthy elder.
Right.
Healthy elders had enough life experience that like there can be a loss, a trauma, a huge financial loss, and they've had enough experience. They're like, all right, here's another big wave of change in life, and loss, and they can trust something that like they're going to be okay even though there's loss. And a lot of us, it becomes life or death if we're going to lose a job, or if our kid doesn't get an A in school, and there's this like big reactivity. And maturity in us is the ability to be like, oh wow, like what a healthy adult does is they let their child have a wave of irritability, frustration, disappointment, anger, and they don't make them wrong or stop it, but they also give them loving presence and care, and then let what comes right after that wave come, which is you're going to be okay. Yeah, all right, you're welcome to have your feelings, and look, they passed, and what's here now? Yeah. And within our own self, to be able to feel rage about what's happening in the politics right now or environmentally, and not have that color or interrupt the ability to also love our partner in front of us, or to care about our kids and not be overwhelmed by the news and the media, which is so loaded with fear and overwhelming, information.
Yeah. And
so it takes a lot for us to digest and meet like that. Wow, at times I'm terrified of the future of humanity, of what's going on. And I also love my life and what I'm doing and what I'm up to. And I realize I can't change everything that's going to happen. I don't know, but I also am not going to avoid and check out. I'm going to try to hold some of this like fear of what's going on and anger I feel towards things that I can't change.
Yeah.
And move that through me and be able to love and hold that. I feel like that's really powerful shadow work. Because I'm going to look at the darkest places in me that could hurt, that could kill. We all have that in us. We go and make people wrong for what they do, or like, you see these mass shootings. And I think all of us have a killer inside of us that could be hurt enough, could be checked out enough, could be so uneducated in so many ways inside ourselves that we can make choices because we've been playing video games so much that we've lost connection with reality, and then go shoot somebody down. Yeah. And we have that capacity, all of us inside of us. And one of the ways to help solve that on an individual level is that I'm willing to start looking at that place in me that could hurt, that could kill, that even has impulses to that on some level, not because I'm going to activate it, but because I'm going to allow some space for that, and I'm not going to lose connection with love and heart and what's important to me and what's valuable. And I'm going to let that shine light on the darker, heavier, denser places in me that I may not want to look at, but that I'll make wrong in the world.
Yeah.
And so that's, to me, is a lot of our powerful work that we're on right now.
How do you find balance in doing, like staying in the world that you're in, or staying in the world that I want to be in, and then still having like the outward things that are required for life, like doctors, lawyers, people that are working for corporate America? It's like, I'd say a large majority of them probably aren't doing this kind of work, because they're stuck in the rat race. They're paying the bills, they have mortgages to pay, car payments to pay, like whatever. How do you balance that? How do you, cause like, I know like I've done some plant medicine before, and after it was really hard for me to go back to reality and be like, this doesn't even, like, what am I doing? This doesn't even make sense. Like, I'm doing all this stuff for what? For a paycheck? And it's painful to like know that like, that's just the reality of life. Like, I have to do this because I have to put food on the table. But there's another part of me that's like, I'm so resistant to this. I don't want to do it at all. So how do you find the balance for that? How do you find a way to justify like what you have to do to like pay the bills?
there's a lot of layers to this, because many of the choices we make early in life to do the career we're going to do often comes out of, programming, fear, I have to attitude. We kind of like, create our lives, and we have children and take on all this responsibility, and life all of a sudden is like, what am I doing? And there is a sobering reality to waking up like, what have I created? I've created a monster. I have a job that doesn't quite pay enough, but yet I'm there 45, 50 hours a week or whatever, and I'm not fulfilled. I'm not happy. And because of that, I bring that home, and I'm not present with my wife and my kids. And so that's a sobering thing to wake up to.
Yeah.
And what I do my best to share when I work with clients around this is that we have to get really good at resourcing ourselves. And no matter what we do in the world or where we're at, if we have food on our table and we can get, we're doing life, we can find things that have us connect with what feels good in ourselves right now. So even if I hate my job, there are moments when I can turn on a certain degree of aliveness and plug into what is the gifts of this life. So resourcing to me is slowing down this insane mind that almost all of us have, and what the spiritual teachers all over the world always says, like, this mind is full of stories and illusions about reality, and it's like these passing clouds, and obviously it's a tool. We are underdeveloped in our experience of being at home in ourselves fully. And if I learn to be at home in my body, in my heart, in the blood moving through me, in the breath, in the fresh air I breathe, and my ability to kind of find what feels good about simply being alive, I start to build a new foundation to live from. And when I build that foundation healthier, I start to make different choices about food I eat. Whether I'm checking out with alcohol, whether I want to do this, but I start to actually build more energy, more aliveness inside of me. And then maybe I'm more gravitate towards yoga practice or hitting the gym more often or doing things that basically turn on more oxygen, more aliveness inside of me. And then from that place, I start to have more creative power.
Yeah.
So we can feel like we're caught in a job. And I use this teaching piece called above or below the line. And when we're below the line, we're often feeling at the effect of victims to our life, victims to our circumstance. Things suck. They're always hard. And we have these mantras inside of our minds we keep repeating of, it's always like this hard. It was like this for my dad. We carry these, basically, we keep repeating these programs that keep us in the same pattern relationally, work-wise. And the goal for me is that I want to resource myself, get back into my body, in my heart, in my breath, in my aliveness, in my passion. Even if that's 5 minutes a day, I'm going to find windows to do that. I'm going to get back above the line where it's like, I really believe that I can make choices that direct my life in a different direction. I can find things that I get passionate about. I can start to learn something on the side, so I build a skill set to do a different job or a different life or a different way that I do things. And when we start to build that, we start to open up more possibility in our lives.
Right.
It's never easy to wake up from our reality and look around and go like, wow, look what I've created. I'm stuck living in a place I don't like, with a wife I'm unhappy with a relationship with my kids that isn't good, and a job I hate. And that's a real reality for a lot of people in the world.
Definitely.
And so from that place, that's a tough thing. We have to get support. We've got to get committed. We've got to get educated. We've got to make choices that start to turn us back on. And most of us, we're burning up most of our life force and energy with stress, thinking, and worry, and then bad foods and whatever we're taking to check out.
Yep.
Whether that's potato chips or alcohol or smoking too much pot or whatever it is, people are checking out. And we could use those resources to start checking in more and to breathe deeper, to find our heart, to slow down, to meditate, to start to resource ourselves in a way that we can look at our life from more of a fresh, clear lens.
Totally. Yeah, it was hard for me going to work when I would be doing some of the work, and I was like, man, I would go back and I would be like, this really isn't for me. I don't really fit in here at all. Because I don't you almost get stuck in that race of, you're kind of you're a part of their culture. It's not your culture that you're creating, you're part of theirs. So you kind of have to adapt to it. Where you bring your work home, like you were saying, it's you're always available, your phone's constantly on, this and that. But that's such a good point to resource yourself, find the good and stuff, you know what I mean? And then with all that, when you cut out all the minutia and all the stuff that you're allowing to take your life force energy, I think it's natural that your creativity will open up to where it's you'll create something different, where it's a different path for yourself. Because I remember at a certain point in my life, it's actually when I was in the military, I was on the back of what they call a deuce, and it was a bunch of us in the back of this big truck, and we're all cammied up. We all have our M16s and whatever. And it just hit me out of nowhere. I was like, what the fuck am I doing here? How did I get here? And like, it was all like a blur. And I was like, dude, I can't believe I'm here right now. Like, what is going on? And I found myself doing that a lot in my life, where like I would get to a certain point in my life and be like, what, dude, how did it end up here? What am I doing? Because there was no thought to anything. It was just kind of just, just go for it, And I was creating a lot of my own drama. A lot of the things that I had in my life that were wrong and that were just creating a lot of heartache and stress for me were self-created. I did it myself. And I think you're right. Like, a lot of that was like it's like generational. You look at like the wheel, and it's kind of like being created. And it's like, that's kind of, if you fall into that same thing, you're just gonna be doing the same thing. And then your kids, and then their kids, and like whatever. So somebody's got to break the mold.
You got it.
It's got to be me.
I consider that we're on the front line of, all of our ancestry and our willingness to feel instead of check out. There's a lot of that. And I work with so many people who, they've got a stressful job, so when they get home from work, what they do is they just check out and play video games or watch TV or a movie or whatever. And I'm like, hey, that's prime real estate time.
Yeah.
Like, you could do a lot, like, I need that to chill out. I'm like, no, that does not help you chill out. That's going to keep you in a cycle that doesn't serve you. So it's like, don't watch any more movies. Go take a walk with your partner. Go to the park. Do some breathing. Go do something that starts to shift how you feel and lets you shed some of the frustration, irritability, overwhelm, works you get resourced. And there's so much little windows of time. Getting up 20 minutes earlier and doing 10 straight minutes of very deep breathing will change our experience. Like, we get more oxygen in our brain, we feel differently. And so I think I go, what can you do that shifts your state? And that's not drug induced. That's like breath induced, walk induced, quiet induced, body awareness induced, like simple things that start to actually change what we're doing and what we value. And most of us have been programmed to value, another stimulant, whether that's, the next cup of coffee or the next TV series that's on, instead of actually becoming energy generators of what we want. So our culture, we're mostly unconscious consumers looking for the next truck to buy or whatever it is, shopping for something, buying something, and we can use credit and we get ourselves in debt and in debt and debt, versus actually generating the experiences we want to have. And our nervous systems are unfortunately far more developed towards what's going to go wrong. Like, when am I going to feel bad again? When that pain in my back's going to get worse again? When am I going to have the next headache come? When am I going to be, when's my wife going to be upset again? There's always stories versus, how do I generate joy right now? How do I access love? How can I just feel good inside myself? And I teach people how to actually turn their nervous system back on to running on more positive current and learning to build those neural networks receptors so that we're polarizing more towards our baseline experience being one of like, things are really good. Yeah. Even though I live in a chaotic world.
Yeah, totally. You did another exercise with me not too long ago where I was hurting, my back was killing me. I was like, man, this is terrible. Yeah, well, can you find something good in your body right now? Can you find something that feels good? Now let's magnetize that. And we did, and I was like, oh shit, I don't feel my back anymore. It's gone. And I shared that with a buddy of mine because he was having terrible back pain, and so I did the same thing with him. And I told him, I was like, what about that like sex force you feel like in your genitals? Feel that. And of course, like, there was some laughter, because it sounded silly at first, and he was like, what are you talking about? I was like, just listen to me, do it. And he did it, and he was like, wow. He's kind of blown away by it because it's true. I think our wiring is so in tune with like what could go wrong next and what pain are we going to have next? What's this going to be next? And it's like you're constantly in a frantic like mindset, the monkey brain is just going crazy. Yep. Where do you see this work like going? What's your biggest, if you had to like identify like a dream, like what would be your dream outcome for everything that you're doing?
My ultimate highest ideal is that we have another way that we relate, that there's more bridges of how we connect that simultaneously invites us to show up more fully, but also has us feel welcome to be who we are. And for there to be more and more circles of that among men and women and situations where basically we are creating environments where we thrive in it rather than just go into autopilot. You go to a barbecue with the family, the extended family, there's these autopilot mechanisms of you don't talk to her about that. We don't talk about politics. There's all these like checks and balances. And I want to live in a place where it's like, you know what? I'm not going to sacrifice authenticity and love. And I'm not going to like hide from the elephant in the room. I'm going to say, hey, Dad, you're drinking too much.
Yeah.
And I love you. And I'm saying that because for me, it's too painful to watch you drink more. Or the way you're hitting your kid, my brother, the way you hit your kid when you do that, like I notice I feel rage in my body and I want to hit you. And I don't want to do that, but I need to get really real with you that when you do that for me, like this, my whole body lights up and I can't see that. I can't witness that. And so what happens is that as men, as women, as leaders in the world, we all take leadership in our lives in a certain way. So I imagine more and more circles, more men's work that's being led in all kinds of ways and relational work that has us each take responsibility or ownership to be a leader in our life, whether that's the more leadership father, where I'm loving and supporting my kids more, or leadership in creating the kind of experience I want in my relationship with my wife, and not avoiding that and checking out, or taking the initiative and leadership to create the environment at work I want to be in. And also, like we're in the locker room talk, there's all these things of like, the guy doing the same thing, like, damn, she's hot. I so just want to bend her over and like power. I just want to power through her right now. Like, damn, like, and being like, I get that. Like, and I know I'm attracted to her too. And you know what? I really just don't want to have that conversation anymore. Yeah. Like, I'm not interested in belittling another woman because she's dressed hot. And just not participating in actually in raising the bar. Like, hey, bro, I totally respect and honor you. And that conversation doesn't interest me anymore.
Yep.
I'm not in here. I don't want to go talk shit about your brother. I want you to invite you to go say that to him. And what needs to be cleared with him, do some work around that versus just complaining about who he is or what he does. Or for instance, politics. People will talk all kinds of shit about the president and all that and then take no action. Yeah. So people watch the news, they have all these strong opinions and stories and beliefs and they spread their opinions around, but there's not a lot of backbone or action in that to actually make waves that actually will make a difference. And so to me, that's where I would like to see this work, is it just starts seeding and growing more people to take leadership, initiative, ownership, accountability, to participate in creating the life they want, the world they want, the community they want. Right. That's my ultimate goal.
That's awesome, man. I love when you talk about like the people getting stuck in that negativity cycle, where it's like with people or things, the news, like their neighbor, whatever. And what I found myself doing was like, I was like just getting rid of all that stuff, very black and white. So it's like, you know what? I don't need a TV. What do I need a TV for? I waste too much time on that because I'm guilty of coming home and like being like, I'm just going to check out. I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to do anything. I'm just going to watch TV. Next thing I know, 4 or 5 hours have gone by and I didn't accomplish anything other than watching whatever episode I was watching. And so I was like, I'm just going to get rid of it. I don't need it. And now what I'm trying to do is find like balance with all that stuff. Yeah. Be like, you know what? Like, it's okay to watch TV every once in a while. Like, for example, my cousin asked me if I wanted to be a part of this fantasy football team. And I was like, or his league. And initially, my initial response was like, nah, I'm not into that stuff, man. I don't really care. I don't really watch football. I don't have a TV. So, like, I'm not going to get involved with it. And I thought about it. I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to do it this year. I told Kathleen, I'm going to do it. And she's like, why? What's the change? I was like, I like that sense of community. I like the fact that I can call my cousin, like, we have something to talk about. I mean, like, hey, what player are you going to pick up this week? Oh, okay, cool. And it's just like a healthy dialogue, And I don't want to exclude myself from things like that anymore, because it's not. I don't need to get all wrapped up in it. And my week doesn't need to be shaped by if my fantasy football team won or not. I mean, it's fun when they win, but it's like there's an excitement to it. It's like, all right, cool. Like, we're doing fantasy football, we're picking up players, and there's a strategy to it. And it's kind of like it got my brain kind of fired up, my heart fired up to be with these other men that are like into it and whatever. So I chose to do it this time. I'm like, I'm not gonna do that anymore. I just shut myself out from things. I'll just find a healthy balance to it all. Because I think that there was a lot of judgment for me with people being like the social justice warriors, but they're not really making any action. They're just complaining a lot. And it's like, you're adding to the problem, like do something about it. I get messages on Instagram a lot from just random people that I don't know. And one of the messages was, we should just get rid of the military. Get rid of it. And he was very adamant about it. And he's like, all the wars we're involved with right now, they have, they're not helping us at all. I said, although I may agree with you, like, it's not practical, bud. And so I'm not gonna go down this rabbit hole conversation with you because like it's not practical, and I can't change it. So like that's kind of where I want to go now. Is like I want to talk about things that I have the power to maybe change. Mm-hmm. Getting outside of myself about things I can't control. Why? Just adds to my angst. Like, I don't want to do it anymore. It's not healthy. And As far as success, how would you define success for you or for anybody?
There's one thing I want to comment on first before I answer that. And what I appreciated about how you spoke about fantasy football was that for you, there's some connection that happens through that. There's some camaraderie and connection. And to me, that's gold. That's a real valuable thing we have in our world. We thrive on that. And so finding ways to have more connection is ultimately it. Because we live in a world where people are so busy that actually the first thing that goes is connection.
Yeah.
And busyness and doing and more, and it interrupts connection, when really the reason the planet is as impacted as it is we value doing and busyness over connection, over attunement, over that. So bringing that to success, success to me has a lot to do with how at home and content I am in who I am, where I'm right now. And that also includes having some fire to want to do something, want to be a part of the world, wanting to play a part here versus having, a couple private jets and flying over to the next cool vacation spot. And, there's this illusion of success that like when we have it all in a couple houses around the world that will be fulfilled, or when we have the wife and kids. And, success to me is, am I doing what lights me up? And is more of my life enlivening and inspiring and juicy so that I get excited to get up. I got things I want to do versus checking out, versus like here's another thing I have to play this game again here. I have to be dad to these things and I don't like this. So, I think there's a lot of degrees of success, and I believe that it's healthy to restructure, because we're built on a foundation of a false success in humanity, and especially in the Western culture here in the U.S., because the U.S. uses over 60% of the resources of the planet, or has, and we're the least happy people on the planet in a certain degree too. Maybe not, that could be arguable, but for the most part, people have the nice cars, the house and all that, and then underneath that there's these layers of depression, of unfulfillment, of self-judgment, and because we have so much, and I think what's not talked about is that actually on some level there's a shame in the Western culture that people aren't even in touch with yet, that we're at this and we know that every time we drive our car we're having some degree of an impact on the environment, that we're creating some pollution, that all the trash we throw away, what's going on in the ocean, on some level we're going to wake up to the fact that the lifestyle we live and all we have and the way we've been taking from the planet, whether that's how we harvest oil or any other resource, or what we do with our trash, or what we do with our dyes and our pollution, where that goes in the water, that on some level we're actually going to wake up to a huge degree of shame. That we haven't really been living with accountability of our actions and impact, or making wise use of our resources. And we're paying a price for that. And so I think success would be that I'm living in a way on the planet where I feel like I'm part of a living experience that includes most of what's happening around me. And that includes the homeless people on the street, that at least I give a smile, or I don't just like have a negative thought and a judgment at them, but like on some level I see them as humans, and I see them as people that have feelings and come from something I never will understand. And I think success is that we're willing to feel it all and be with it all, that I'm willing to feel the hurt and the fear and the rage and the anger and the love and the beauty and the grace and the magnificence of this life, and that we're willing to ride that full spectrum. And I even will go as far as this sense of ecstatic aliveness that I really value, that when I watch the moon rise here over the trees and the sun setting and there's a light and the air is fresh, there's this experience of like, oh my God, this is so phenomenally good, and can I let myself have this moment all the way to the point where my system is thoroughly enjoying this.
Totally.
And I think that all of us can widen that spectrum of being able to face the fear and the pain, but also feel the joy and the beauty and the sex and the goodness and the love and the connection, and to learn how to create more of that so that our lives are fulfilling, that if I die tomorrow, I'm good. I'm at peace with the people in my life, with my father, with what happened, and so that I feel complete even now.
How would you want to be remembered, speaking on that? Like, what would be what's like prime importance to you?
That I lived fully, and that I thoroughly cared, and that I was willing to follow what felt most juicy and important in my life, and I was willing to participate.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you a personal question, if you don't mind. why didn't you have any kids? And I'll tell you why I'm asking. Because I see guys like you, and I'm like, you'd be an incredible father. Like a father that I wish I had. So it's like almost like doing the world a disservice by not procreating and like bringing these kids up into the world with like a healthy father that knows like things and can teach them things so they can go out and do the same. And you're the second person I've asked that to, because I have another friend, the same thing. He's just such an incredible man, but he doesn't have kids. And I'm like, dude, why? So I'm sorry if that's too personal, but
no, it's okay.
I wanted to ask it.
You know, it's an evolving question for me of like what's there. And the first answer I'd say is that in my 20s, which would have been a really ideal time to have children, I was so loaded with fear and insecurity, and I certainly looked at our future as not being very bright. You know, and I've known for a long time that the future we're creating as far as environmentally and how things are going on the planet has not looked good. And so my first choice came from that, of like, I don't want to bring children into a world where that, like, I go to a national park right now and it's so packed that there's nowhere to camp anymore. And so where am I going to take my kid? You know, and that the things that I enjoy the most is like clean water and all these places that the resources of that are getting narrow and limited. So that would be one answer. And if I got really honest, it's been that I've had a fair amount of fear about that, about having to do a job or a lifestyle where I sacrifice my integrity so that I have enough money to pay for my kid. And that ties into something else for me, is that the way that we live is not very community oriented overall. Like for me, if I want to have children, I want to live with like 4 other families in a neighborhood that have children in a similar age, and where my kids can go to their house and hang out, and I can trust that they're making food, and that I'm not this individual unit with my wife and kids where I'm driving them to school every day, and I just don't like our system of how we do it. I want to live more of an intricate web of family, and that's not really available for the most part. And I don't want to live in some alternative way hippie community that's in fight and judgment of the world either, because there is some of that, but it's a little too far to the left sometimes for me. I want to be in the world and integrated and not be in this contrast to it, but I want to also feel like there's elders and diversity and family. And so those things have all informed me to not feel drawn to it. And I haven't been someone who's generated a huge amount of money and resources that feels like I have a lot of extra. I don't want to like take a job in a certain sense where I'm not doing what I really love and that lights me up so that I have plenty of money to pay for the kids. I just don't feel like I want to play that game.
Yeah, that's fair. I was sharing with Paulo earlier. He was saying something about, I asked him why, if he was going to have more kids. And he was like, I don't think so. It was tough having the one. Because it takes away from like the things that I want to do, because I have a kid. And I was like, it's funny that you say that, because I think a lot of men, I can't speak for women, so I'm just going to speak for men. Because I know a couple people I've talked to, that there's a selfishness to like that you have, or that I have, and then when you have kids, they come first, and I struggled with that hard for many, many, many years. Like Brendan, my oldest, he didn't have me fully, because I was still in the world doing my own thing, trying to find the truth, trying to find, sift through all the pain and hurt and things that I had going on, and then trying to show up, be an available father for him, like really wasn't happening at all. And so there's a part of that I think a lot of guys aren't owning, is like, there's a selfishness that you want to have like your life too. You want to be able to go out into the world and like learn things and be a lifelong learner. But sometimes that gets taken away because you have kids and they need your attention, and it's a tough balance. It's a tough way to a line to walk, if you will. So I'm still trying to find that balance, with my kids, where it's like I want to be the best that I could be for them, but part of that is like by coming to these kind of retreats, and like really opening up and coming back like more available. I'm missing some time with them while I'm here, but it's like I come back and I'm even better than I was before, so it's all good. Ideally it'd be like you do this work before you have kids. You'd be all right, In
a healthier culture, we would have a bit more maturity and readiness to enter fatherhood too, and a lot of people don't. Also I live in Hawaii, and the cost of living is really high, and when my father was raising me, 80% of his income didn't go to his rent or his mortgage payment. And we live in a culture where like the cost of living in the places we want to live, so much of our money goes into simply having a house and paying the taxes on that house and stuff like that. Like currently a lot of my money goes into owning a house in Hawaii, you know, and so there's a reality thing there of me of like, I wouldn't want to like sacrifice living in a place I didn't want to live, where there wasn't community and lifestyle and nature and things I want to do, so that I could afford the house I have, you know. So the mortgage payment was, you know, instead of being $3,000 a month, it was $1,000 a month or something. And so those are factors that were real for me. And it's just a different time where, you know, in California, particularly in places like that I want to live, the cost of living is so high that you have to have an incredibly good job or be a very big generator financially to have enough time to hang out with your kids. And that was the other thing is, I would probably have kids if I didn't have to generate money, and I could take them for all kinds of wilderness adventures, and I could be a parent, you know, a lot of time, and that, like, you know, 60% of my time wasn't going into work. Right. But there was more time to just enjoy and create and be with them. And I got to run kids camps for many years for these Sufi retreats, and I got to play with a lot of kids, and I love that. And I want more time with more kids together in these environments where the kids aren't just trying to do school, but they're playing games and learning different skills and different things that make them more rounded in their skill set. And to me, those are all values that just aren't yet here. They're you know, wilderness schools aren't available so much. And the ones that are cost $20,000 a year.
Right. You know, it's funny. I think a lot of us don't really give that much thought. You know, when you go to have kids, it's kind of I mean, for me anyway, it's like there wasn't a lot of thought into it. It was like, I'll figure it out. I'll sort it out. You know, people are like, oh, I'm not ready to have kids yet. You're never going to be ready. Right. You know, so it is what it is. Do you think that's something that's closed off for you? Like, you think you're not going to have kids? Is that kind of is that like a closed door?
I don't have a rule on that as a closed door. No, I mean, I'm 44. My wife is 40, and it's been coming up in waves for her. So we've been having some conversations about it, and I don't feel strongly about it. And I'm also someone who feels that if I was to have kids, I would have a strong sense of knowing I'm here to do that. Yeah. And I don't believe people should have children on the planet unless they have a hell yes for it. Yeah. You know, there's a lot of people say don't marry someone unless you have a hell yes. You know, you're all the way in. And I'm a fan with that with kids. Like, accidentally having kids and not being a big full yes and consciously welcoming them into the world and intentionally bringing them in is not a service to the planet. Right. And so I've never had that hell yes, and I've had it for a ton of other things in my life and my work and what passion for me. And so I trust that too. And I, you know, I'm not someone who spends a lot of time talking about past lives, but I feel like I've done it so many times. Like, for me, it feels like having kids is easy, like being a father and all that, and that maybe my edge is a little different and has a little more to do with leadership in this life or something. I'm not sure, but I've trusted this place in me because my best friend just had his second child, and he's put some heat on me a few times of like, you're not fulfilling your purpose here by not having children. He's had his judgments because he wants me to have kids and hang out with him, you know, totally. And be co-parents. And I've just, when he says that to me, I just notice this, I have this neutral, like, you know, it's not a hot fire for me. I haven't had this sense of knowing. I feel like that would be there. Yeah. You know, and so to me, that's the number one, really. Yeah, and I have no judgment about you not having kids. It's just like I feel like a sense of sadness that you don't, just because I know like the pain that I had to endure growing up. And it's like, man, imagine how well-rounded that child would be having you as a dad. And it's like, it's more of a compliment to you to be like, yeah, it'd be awesome to see you as a father. But no judgment at all, brother. So I'm getting to uncle quite a bit because my brother has kids, my best friend has kids, and I just spent the month of August with my wife's sister and family in Canada, which is every month with their 2 kids, niece and nephew, and I play with them all month. Yeah. And I take on uncle fully and get to really, I get really fulfilled by that, but I also feel like I get to be a part of their lives in a really beautiful way and really cool. Read them stories at night, and it's a beautiful thing for me. So I am a bit fed by that as far as getting to activate some of that in me. I think I had a sense of like longing for family because my grandmother was she was like the pillar of the family. So when she was alive, and my mom, and even though my mom and I never really had a good connection, but my aunt and my mom would be there, all the cousins would be there, my grandma was there, and her brother, my uncle, was there, and it was like this huge like family get together. And sure, there may have been like, you know, people talking shit about one another, who knows, you know? But just being together and like having those moments of like those memories. I was telling Kathleen, I was like, you know, like we would have Christmas at my grandma's house and there would be like these gifts just piled up all over the living room. I was like, but you know what? I don't remember one gift I ever received from my grandma. Not one. And I was like, you know why? Because it didn't matter to me. I
I don't care about the material stuff. The memories I remember is us going outside and playing darts. Us going outside and there's a little racetrack we would play on. My cousins and I going out in the back and playing football with each other. You know, those are the memories that I remember, you know. So it's really important to me to have that and create that in my own family. So I'm working on that. I'm trying to like take that position of leadership. So we just had like when I got back from this last retreat, I was like, you know, I'm gonna start doing that. So I reached out to the entire family. I was like, I'm gonna have a get together at the house. You guys want to come? And everyone came over. It was a big pool party, and like we did a potluck style. So everyone brought food, and like I was like, this is what it's all about. No TV. There's a couple people on their phones or whatever, but usually what we've been doing is like, it was actually my cousin's idea. Like when people come over, there's a box for the phones, and you put it in the phone box. So you're not allowed to be on your phone when we're with family. Like it's family time to talk, connect, ask each other what's going on in your lives. Like, and it's a really healthy like environment. It's really cool.
Fabulous.
Yeah, man.
Well, I honor you in that way because that's exactly what we're talking about here. When you're taking initiative in that of, you know, okay, I want to be different. I want to show up in this way. So I didn't like that. Didn't feel good to me to have my, you know, mother-in-law not participate much. So
Right.
I'm going to participate. And that's it. That's the movement. We can spend a lot of time judging others and their actions, or we can be the change, or we can be what we really want people to show up as. And I encourage everybody in a relationship that way, like with someone where we're waiting for our partner to be the one who's more affectionate. It's more loving. It's like versus it's just initiating what we want and creating that and being proactive is really powerful.
Yeah, that's a hard one too. I think from a man's perspective, you know, I know like for Kathleen and I, when we've talked about this, like where there's a lack of like affection, you know, a lack of like love and connection, and there's a lot of like frantic energy because of like raising kids, and it's challenging. You know, they're all below 5. You know, like the 12-year-old, 4-year-old, 3-year-old, and 1-year-old. It's a lot of action. And it's like at the end of the day, it's like, what's left for me? Like really not much, you know, like because we're drained. And I had to come from a place, or I'm working on coming from a place of like understanding and being like trying to take that initiative is sometimes hard because there is some hurt that comes in with that. Like, man, I don't get any love from you. I don't get any affection from you. Like, you know, and then you get like your hurt feelings and you just check out in whatever way, whether it be, I mean, real talk, you know, porn or something else to get like your affection or attention somewhere else, you know? And I'm working on doing better at that, like taking the initiative in that relationship for sure. What would you say is the biggest lesson that you learned your entire life that you wish you could share with a younger Shems or with young men that are coming up in the world, or young women, it doesn't matter, but like the biggest lesson that you learned that maybe you experienced a lot of heartache with?
I have 2 that come to mind. One of them is that my mind most of the time is not my friend, and that there's a wisdom inside of my gut and heart that is deeper and more intelligent than the thoughts. And the second one that goes right along with it is that my thoughts about what others think about me or what's going on are most of the time inaccurate. Right. And so I can make up all kinds of stories about what I think's going on and have that create a lot of suffering inside when that's not really what's going on, versus I can drop in deeper in myself, listen, even ask somebody what's going on. So for me, it's learning to quiet this mind, and not like turning off the mind and trying to figure, but like turning on more of our whole body experience. Heart, gut, pelvis, genitals, blood, body, and learning to use more of what I call our whole being intelligence. And that, if someone could have taught me that when I was young, I would have had such an easier time in school. I would have had such an easier time relaxing and not feeling anxious and uncomfortable, which was mostly mentally created through thoughts and stories. And so I think we live in a degree of insanity because of the amount of mental activity. Yeah,
I agree. I think I struggle with anxiety. I still do, you know, with like anxiety, panic attacks, whatever. But I think I agree with you. A lot of that's in the mind. And learning to quiet that is when, and I did this even with my surgery, like when I was recovering. You go down this rabbit hole of pain, and pain's created in the mind, you know? So like, I was like, my body's hurting. It's a major surgery, you know, I'm at home, and it's like, should I take these pills that are right next to my bed? And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. And then you start going down this like weird, like mental path that's not healthy. And so I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to quiet my mind. I'm just going to shut it off. Let my body do whatever it's going to do and let it heal naturally. That's exactly what I did. It worked. And so I was like, man, if it worked for that, Like, it's got to work for other things, you know? So I've been working on that with the anxiety. Like when I get really bad, like anxiety, it's usually a visceral response. I just ask myself, where is it coming from? Why am I getting that response? And I talked to you about the trauma book that I'm reading right now, The Body Keeps the Score.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of it comes from. You know, like your body keeps the score. And if you don't start addressing some of it, it's going to come up in weird ways. Then you're like, dude, what is going on?
Yeah.
You know? And I was going down this rabbit hole of like searching for an answer to the symptoms that I was having. Do I have lung cancer? Do I have brain cancer? Do I have this? Do I have that? Looking for all these answers. And I see a lot of people doing it, like even people in my family and friends, you know, that are just searching for answers for things that you're healthy. You're totally fine. It's just anxiety. It's just trauma. It's coming out in these weird random ways that you don't understand yet. But if you can tap into some of that, you can heal it. You can process it. And that's been my work like lately. And I think that's where I want to go with doing men's work for myself, is like working with men on processing trauma, like getting over some of the trauma, because there's so much of it amongst our society, you know? And I learned that from this last retreat, was like, when we're in the circle and going over like the things that we were shameful for, how much shame like we all had for random, like just things that, you know, from molestations, from sexual encounters or whatever. It's like a lot of us had it. A lot of us had a lot of that stuff, a lot of that baggage that we're carrying around that we hadn't processed. What do you think is the end game for your company? Like doing like what you're doing? Like, do you think you'll have like a mentorship where you get other coaches, like basically you become the pillar, and then like there's other coaches that spread out? How do you want to do that?
I'm kind of doing a bit of that right now. I have 5 men mentoring with me for a year.
Yeah.
And I see more of the online platform I've been creating called the Men's Passage, this 2 to 3 month online program where I teach a lot of these skills. That way I see that continuing and growing, and then doing retreats. And yeah, I see more men stepping into their full capacity, gifts, coaching skills. I'm not sure if under my brand or not. I don't necessarily have this vision that I have a brand on how to do men's work. That's probably an edge for me that I could get some more exploration. Yeah. But I see myself continuing to do this and having more men grow into what I'm doing with me, and their own, from the gifts they bring and from what they learn, and them stepping out and creating more circles. And I have that. I have a man in Thailand who's been working with me, Lucas, who you met, who's leading circles in Thailand. Jeremy, who's going to be co-facilitating with me through this weekend, is leading circles in San Francisco on his own, not under any label with me of the Men's Passage, but in his own work. And so I'm really wanting to empower more men to step into that.
I think that would be powerful for you to have that brand, though. I don't know. I feel it, because I think that, like I share with you, you're like one of the only guy that's ever been able to crack me, that's ever been able to get to the bottom of some of the things I was dealing with. And I'm not saying that I'm some like special case or whatever, but it means something to me, because there's a lot of people that I'm associated with that are struggling too, you know, whatever. And they've been to therapist after therapist after therapist, and none of it's working, you know, because they haven't met the right person. Yep. So I think that like the work you're doing is powerful. And I don't know, it just seems like it would make sense for you to have like your own brand, because it is a powerful thing that you're doing, and to have like guys out like doing the same stuff, you know, because you're only one person. You can't be in multiple spots, but just an idea.
Yeah, appreciate that. There's definitely next level that's possible to how to grow into it.
And what do you think, if you had to pick one person or one book that inspired you the most through this journey of life, who would that person be, and what would that book be, and why?
Honestly, I don't have one. That would give a lot of credit to one place. Yeah.
It can be multiples. It's all good. Yeah.
I recently, in the last 5 years, I've done some work with Robert Masters, and he's a 45-year psychotherapist, and Robert Augustus, his Masters is his name. He's got quite a few books. One of them's called To Be a Man, Transformation Through Intimacy. There's a flavor to what he brings, and his way of working with healing, transformation, and trauma. And he's gifted. He's very gifted in his work. And how he writes and what he writes is really good. So I encourage people to check out. He's got a book called Knowing Your Shadow. He's got a few. And so that's some work in his realm. Yeah. I also very much value Gay and Katie's work, and they have lots of books under the Hendricks Institute, quite a few to read. I've had a lot of mentors and stuff, so I can't put a lot of credit into one person being like a massive catalyst of a piece of work. Honestly, I'll say that that having done a lot of work and then losing everything to a wildfire, which we didn't talk about in this here, where I lost everything in the wildfire, and then working on building a new house and having my best friend burn me for about $400,000 or $500,000, who I thought was a best friend. Right. The lessons I learned through that life process of like what that touched in me and what I wasn't seeing, what I was overlooking because of my care for him and not looking for a deeper level of what else was going on, and my lack of willingness to confront him through some things I was seeing, those taught me more than everything I've learned. And so I also like to say that everything that we're experiencing, our life experience, has the potential to guide us into growth, and that we don't necessarily always need the next book or next teacher or next thing. We need to really look with our heart and our eyes into like what's in front of us. This challenge with our kids, this challenge with our boss, and what am I not seeing? What am I not willing to feel? What am I not willing to look at? Yeah. And how bad does it have to hurt till I make a different choice? So I would say that I put on the highest pedestal of like where all of us have a growth edge to meet. And so we don't have to go look for an outside resource still of something else. Sometimes we need to look at, how am I facing this? And am I willing to learn from this and discover what this is trying to show me?
What did you learn from that experience, if you don't mind sharing it? Because I think that's obviously a heavy experience. So.
Yeah, I was afraid to confront my friend on some shadow stuff that was going on because I didn't want to lose connection and love, and because I was afraid of conflict with him. Yeah. And because of that, it led to a ton of conflict and a ton of loss, and like trying to bring a lawyer in and then choosing not to do that because it was just going to be 4 years of hell of litigation and all that. And I just chose to let it go. But it also led to the ending of my marriage because she felt, what was going on. And it wasn't that specifically that played a part, but the stress and the frustration and all the losses of a fire and house loss and building a new house and have it go sour and be a process led to a lot of deep hardship. And so I learned also that I had a deeper layer inside of me of feelings and hurt that I wasn't really willing to feel. And I remember one time when it got so bad, I was on my knees begging for mercy to God. Like I was on my knees crying on my knees. I was like, I surrender. Like, I'm sorry. What did I do to deserve this? Why is this going on? What am I doing wrong? And that cracked something in me where two things happened. One was I got down to a deeper layer of like anger and hurt and fear that was inside of me. And right along with that, I got access to some strength in me that was greater than my mind or my will or my understanding. And that's what I believe a lot of religious leads to, a lot of spirituality religion leads to, like we surrender to a certain level where all of a sudden we access a deeper power or a deeper knowing. And for me, it had to hurt bad enough to get to that place where that happened. And that gave me access to something bigger. It's almost like I do this work in what we're doing here is like feeling our ancestors behind us. Whether we like them or not, we've got a history of people that have come before us. And most of us aren't connected to that. I feel like on some level we have these healthy resources that want us to thrive in our lives. And that moment and all of that led to me to open to that.
What do you think happens when we die? Speaking of ancestors.
I could say I know and have theories, but I really don't know. On one level, I know we lose this, we shed this body that we're in. And on another level, I feel like something in us lives on beyond this. Right. That we take something with us, some essence of our being, and that goes on to something else or merges with a greater collective of life that it returns to. But ultimately, I had lots of theories over the years, and I've heard lots of things, but I can't say I know inside of me for sure, but I trust the process being a good one. Yeah. And I also trust that like whatever that is on the other side is okay. That said, I also do believe that if we don't, clear house and make peace with things, I believe that will influence what happens when we die. So how the Christianity has this thing of like, do we repent our sins, or what are we carrying, or I do believe the things that we did that hurt others, or where we checked out, or where we were lying, or where we were out of integrity, or where we did things where we didn't forgive somebody, that it's really worth doing that work as much as possible inside of our own hearts or with them if possible, so that we leave clean and clear. Yeah. Because I believe that will influence what happens from here on some level, how things go. So living in as much integrity and clarity and completion as possible from here on, and making choices that have us feel like we're plugged into our power, our hearts, is worth it.
Do you fear death at all?
I don't believe I do. I feel comfortable, and I've almost died many times. I almost died in Hawaii not too long ago, a few years ago, on a downwind paddle when I lost the boards in big surf, and I had to swim a few miles in and almost drowned. And no, I fear more of like suffering. Like, I have a client who's become a friend who was shot twice by his wife because he was having an affair, and he's lived 35 years in a wheelchair without being able to move his legs or have sex and all that, in chronic pain. He's a beautiful man, and to me, I'm scared of that experience a little more, of like living in this body and not being able to play guitar or feel pleasure or go outside and enjoy nature. And I'm a little more scared of that than dying.
Yeah, I've had that come up for me lately, where my son's like scootering and stuff, right? And he's like, "Hey, Dad, like try this jump or whatever." I'm like, "Nah." And he's like, "Why?" I was like, "You know what, man? Like I've come to a place in my life where, like, call it fear, maybe a healthy respect. I just don't like pain. I've been in enough pain. Like, I don't want to be in any more pain." And I think that's a good point, because like I always wondered, like, my anxiety, a lot of it was tied to like death and like, oh man, am I okay? Like, am I okay in my own body? Am I safe in my own body? A lot of that comes from the trauma and everything else. But sourcing like from the bottom of underneath all that, it's not really death that I'm afraid of. It's the suffering. It's like going through more suffering to like get to the end game. The death part is like, yeah, I'll be dead. It won't matter. Like, what happens after that is not my business, But yeah, it's the suffering that I think I fear more. And I think it's because of the suffering I endured, like, in this physical body so far. I'm like, I don't want any more. Like, I'm good.
Yeah.
So finding a place where just letting it go, and I feel like I'm getting there. I'm getting to that place where it's like, will be. It's all good, Pains will come up, things will happen, and you just figure it out, I was trying to find ways to like get to maybe like, oh, I have acid reflux or I have back pain or whatever, and it's like always trying to like take things to fix those problems. And now I'm just coming from a place of like just allowing, just let it be there. It's all good, And the more I allow it, the more it dissipates. Yeah.
This has been my experience too, and I still think it's just a thought that ultimately I'm afraid of suffering or death or not, because I don't know till I'm in it. Because I took a bad fall on my head one time, and I don't think I could move for an hour. My hands or my feet, my nerve was. So I got to experience a minimal moment of paralyzation, right. And there was a place in me that was at peace with it on a certain level. I had all kinds of thoughts and fears, but on some level, the capacity inside of me would have been able to endure that. Yeah. So I also trust that of like, whatever happens on some level, we'll adapt and be able to handle it, and that's part of the gift of humanity. But it's the thoughts about it usually that keep recreating suffering.
Do you have any regrets in your life so far? I think a lot of people I've asked that say, like, I don't live from a place of regret, but I understand that part of it. But like, are there things that you can think about that's like, I kind of regret that, I should have done that differently or whatever?
Oh yeah, there was times I really regret how I treated my brother, and I wasn't like a terrible abusive brother, but there was ways that like I did things that were hurtful to him, and the ways I did, because that's what I learned from my dad and what was done to me. Right. And then I vividly remember being in the school grounds somewhere around like 5th grade or 4th grade or something, walking with my friend and having this partially handicapped boy in front of us walking that we saw every day, and he limped in the way he walked, and we fucked with him. And until this day, when I just feel like such a, like, I can't believe I did that. Like, I just feel like we messed with him a couple times, and it was a little more instigated by my friend than me, and I went along with it. Yeah. And my heart like still hurts when I think about that boy, and I wish I could look him in the eyes right now and be like, man, I am so sorry that I would do that to you, that I treated you that way, that I gave you any negative energy, that I did anything less than like put my arm around you and befriend you.
Yeah. Is there any way to get in contact with him?
No, I mean, I was so young. I didn't see him again after grade school. I don't know who he is or anything like that. And so, no, but I've done some work with it myself around it. I've like visualized him, and I've visualized myself apologizing, and because it's been one of those things that stayed. And then I lied about a sexual experience with a woman when I was like sophomore year in high school. I was like at a friend's house at a party, and they were all expecting me to go have sex with her up in his room, and it was all good, and she was into it and all that, and I couldn't get it up. I couldn't get aroused. Like, for whatever reason, I was so excited about it.
Performance anxiety.
And I got performance anxiety in my friend's bed, and she handled it beautifully. And then I lied to them saying, like, yeah, it was great. And then it got around the school, and then I held that lie,
Wow.
and it led to her and I like not following in our relationship, and for whatever reason I did that because I was so ashamed of like that I wasn't able to, for whatever reason it didn't work, or whatever. I couldn't. So that one stayed with me.
Yeah. There was a girl that I went to high school with, and I told her, I guess in high school, that she should have been like a linebacker or something like that because she was a bigger girl. And I forgot about that. I was a kid just making stupid comments or whatever. So she sent me a message on Facebook. Luckily, like for me, it was like I figured like it was luck that she sent me that message to tell me like that I made that comment to her, because then I can make amends for it, And so I sent her a message. Like I was like, oh, I don't remember saying that, and I kind of just let it go. And then like months had gone by, maybe even years. And it was like, it just kept hitting me in the stomach. Like, oh man, like I can't believe I made her feel that way. Like that's so terrible. Like, and I started remembering the things that I had done to me and things I had said to me. And I was like, and how hurtful that was. And things that like I carried all of these years from the hurts that I've had from people. And I was like, how dare me like do that to somebody else, So I sent her this long like message on Facebook, just telling her, like apologizing to her, like emphatically, I'm so sorry that like I was like so out of touch with like reality, and that I was willing to like, even if it was a joke, to like you've carried this obviously all these years, like you remember me saying that, and I'm sorry for the hurt I caused you. And like she sent me a beautiful message like back, but it felt good to heal that. And I shared with you the other day, like going on the Excel spreadsheet of our reunion for our class reunion, I was so like shameful for the fact that I didn't know a lot of the names on there. I was like, that is so shitty. Like it wasn't that many kids, like 400 kids in our class like that. I mean, it sounds like a lot, but it's really not that much, like in a small town. How many people I could have connected with. I could have like heard their stories, and like whatever. And I was like, this is an opportunity. Like hopefully I can get some of these people to come so I can be like, I'm sorry I never talked to you in high school. And it wasn't out of malice. It wasn't out of like hatred or whatever. It just was ignorance, So yeah, that's all. I hope that one of these days, like that guy's path will cross with yours. That would be amazing. I know you healed it, like, by visualization. I think there's something to that for sure. But being able to see him would be like probably fantastic.
It would be.
Definitely. Is there anything that you want to leave with? Anything that you want to share with the world? Like, how do people connect with you? How do people get in touch with you?
I have a website that's my name, which is simply shemsheartwell.com, that has access to, what I'm up to. And I offer a relationship course too, which is really beautiful for couples. If I shared anything, I want to share like what I'm most proud of as accomplishment, because this one is really strong for me, is that after the wildfire burned our house and everything, my wife met another man, and it led to basically a slow unweaving of our marriage. And how I handled that with him, and how her and I handled that from a place of love and care and respect after 12 years of being together, like letting our marriage dissolve.
Yeah.
And how each of us handled that, and how I was able to handle it. I feel like one of the things I'm most proud of in my life. And I like to say this because I feel like it's one of those small things in some ways that makes huge ripples, because our whole community in Santa Barbara watched us do that. We had a phenomenal relationship. There wasn't a reason for it to end from most people's eyes.
Yeah.
We were leading couples relationship workshops, but it was almost like we completed a cycle together. We grew up together. We met when we were like 23 and spent years together growing up and maturing. And then it felt like something was ending in our journey together, and we were more like brother and sister than we were husband and wife, and she was needing a different kind of relationship. So that happened, and the way that we did that, the amount of respect for one another and love and allyship, and no making each other wrong, trying to hash stuff out, we processed it, we digest it, and we did it with our eyes open, our hearts open. Like, to me, that was one of the best accomplishments of my life.
Yeah.
And I like to pass this message out, because I feel like we can all do that. Even if we didn't have a healthy relationship that's not working, there's always room to see what it has taught us, so that we can, if we're leaving it, we can do it with grace. We can do it with honor. We can do it with respect, and we can do it with, we're not blaming the other for what they did or how it went wrong, but we can take more accountability for what we've created and what we can learn from it and harvest from it. And I think this is important, because it's a daily reality many people deal with, and then they leave these messes that their kids inherit.
Yeah.
And then they put their kids in between them and their partner. And I just feel like there's a lot of games that go on between men and women in relationships when things don't go well that are not played well.
Yeah.
And that I like to just call out a raising of the bar of like every single person who listens to this can show up more responsibly, more powerfully, more consciously, and more lovingly, no matter what in their relationship, and it's worth it.
Totally, man. I think that's heavy because look at the divorce rate. I mean, like people, it's just natural. People just are gonna separate and this and that, but usually it comes from a place of anger and hurt and frustration, and I was guilty of it myself. You know, you go through it, and it's like, okay, it's done and it's good for me, but now we don't speak. We hate each other. You know, it's like that, and that's not healthy for anybody. My son, for my ex-wife, for anybody. No, that's an amazing like journey that you went down with that, because it's hard to do. You know what I mean? Like, because there is a lot of like, especially with another man involved, it's like, it's like a gut check, you know?
And him and I, we faced some fire. Like he joined the men's circle I had, and he brought me in there and asked me to have all my stuff off the property within a certain amount of time. And like, we went head to head, and like, I felt rage. I could have ripped his throat out, you know, and I faced that, and I just said it. Like, right now, I feel like I could kill you. Like, I feel that energy in my body. And we had men holding space, and just, there's a lot of room to move some of that too. And what's powerful is him and I have become good friends through that, and we feel really aligned, and I visit with them, and they visited me in Hawaii. And the real exciting thing is that my previous wife and I still connect. You know, every once in a while we have a good conversation.
She on Facebook?
Yeah.
Is her last name the same as yours?
Yep.
I didn't know if that was your sister or your.
No, that's my previous wife, Lamar.
Because I sent her a friend request thinking it was like you guys were related. Because I saw that she had mutual friends like with you, and so I was like, oh, okay, cool, that's your ex-wife. All right.
Yeah, she's amazing. But what's been beautiful is that we both have gotten real, though, of like we're still learning the lessons. Like, even though it got better with him for a while, there was a different, more passionate thing. Yeah. The same patterns arose, and us getting so real of taking responsibility for that piece of, wow, this is the same issues are coming up. It's not really about the other person. And that's a powerful thing, to take responsibility, to talk about that, to honor that. That's what's happening. And we didn't even need to separate on some level. We could have grown to another level of our relationship. And so I also say that to people often too, is that there is an illusion of looking for a brighter reality over there versus really doing the work within what's in front of me right now and who's in front of me right now. There's a lot more potential for growth. I don't mean everybody should stay together. I just know that if each person's willing, a lot of healing can happen in relationship.
Do you regret that? Like, regret the decision to leave?
No, I grew massively from that. I would say that was one of the biggest catalysts of me doing the work I do in my world now. Wow. And I'll say that reason that marriage needed to end in some ways too is that I wasn't all the way in my power in a lot of ways. I was doing my acupuncture practice. I wasn't all the way on track. I was growing gardens and fruit trees and living on this beautiful property, and a bit more of the money came from her side than mine. And there was just ways that I was underdeveloped and wasn't showing up, and there wasn't enough heat and fire inside of me to step out more. I was almost like too comfortable. I needed something to shake that up. And the fire did that, but then the ending of the marriage had me actually find my ground in an entirely different way that really has served me.
So how would you tell like another man that's like, you know, there was a potential, like it's probably going to go a certain way, you know, like, hey, we're probably going to just agree to like separate. How would you process some of that hurt? How would you process some of the feelings without allowing the anger and all the other stuff to come in and kind of like shatter the goodness of it all?
Well, I'm a fan of us using something to represent our let's just say it's the wife, right? And we're going to go separation, and giving moments for, 5 minutes, to like let the expression go all the way, but not at her, but to move aggressive energy, to move charge, to move hurt, to express it. So to give ourselves times when we really go all the way with sound, movement, breath, body, to get it out of our tissues, to get it out of our system, and then to stop and re-access love, like self-love, love for our partner, love for our children, love for life, and just to give ourselves room to clear the busyness, the reaction, the hurt. And if we've been hurt by a partner, we've got to get that, we've got to move that through us. We've got to have a therapist or someone to help us digest that, to get it out in a healthy way. Otherwise, it will be this undercurrent of resentment that we may carry in the make-up stories about and never clear enough to make peace with what happened.
Right. And
that's our responsibility. We often forgiveness isn't about the other. It's about us getting access to clear enough of the hurt that we can make peace with what happened.
Yeah. I want to ask you another, just a curious question that I have is, what are your thoughts on open relationships? And the reason that I ask that is because it feels like for me, what has been opening up for me, and I've talked to Kathleen about this, so it's okay that I'm sharing it on the podcast, is it almost feels weird to me to be like, that's my woman. Nobody else can have her. You know, it almost feels like I'm preventing her from experiencing love from other people. Like there's obviously things that like she can have met from other people that I'm not going to be able to offer to her. You know what I mean? It's just, I just don't have the capability for it. And same thing on my side. There may be women that can offer something to me that she's not capable of offering to me. So why close that off? You know what I mean? Like, so what are your thoughts on that? Do you agree with it? Do you think it's detrimental? Do you think, like, what do you think about it?
There's a lot to this one. This is a big conversation.
Yeah.
One thing I think is that we're all in different stages relationally in our maturity, our capacity, and even what we're doing. You know, like a 20-year-old, you know, dating a few different women and discovering what it's like to,
right.
you know, have poly and explore is one thing. My overall thing is most of us are not evolved enough relationally we're usually not mature enough to even show up all the way for one relationship, even for ourselves, to dance with others.
Yeah.
And then there are people who it's part of their matrix and what they're here to do in their life to do polyamory and have multiple partners and do that. I have not seen that very successful. Usually someone gets hurt. Even of the best people I've seen in the San Francisco Bay Area who think they're at the leading edge of it. And I also agree with you. You know, there's not one partner that we own and have rights to, and that, you know, we're never going to be completely satisfied by one person. And then I have this other spiritual side that, you know, we commit and devote to someone, and that can I see that? Can I see this? Let's just say it's my woman in front of me. Can I see this part? Can I see her as a representation of every woman on the planet? And am I willing to widen my viewpoint to recognize that, you know, she has the qualities of every single woman? Of course, there'll be different colors, different flavors, different outfits, different things that it will turn me on differently. But am I willing to devote myself that fully and open that deeply to this being and keep my individual autonomy, not overly merged, so there's a lot here. And I think that there's a huge amount of territory that we can grow into to learn how to really love someone.
Right.
And it equals our capacity to really love and accept ourselves. And that's the first layer of work that's most important. And maybe we do that by having multiple relationships and people will do what they do. I see usually a lot of drama around opening relationships, or you know, when we've been with someone for a long time and we open up the sexual fire with a new partner, it's really hard for that not to be an intoxicating drug.
Yeah.
New partner, new sexuality, new bonding, and most of us do a lot of unconscious pair bonding. And so we'll go, and that fire is so hot that we'll never be able to find that fire again with the mother of our children. Because there's this new different thing and a lot of unknown and a lot of heat. And so relationships go through these stagings of maturity. So, you know, I don't have an answer to what I think's right, other than we do need to all evolve our capacity to love the person in front of us. And regardless of what we choose as far as about open relationships, are we learning how to love all the way here? Are we learning how to show up all the way here? Are we learning how to unkink anything inside of our own hose for generating our own sexual aliveness so that we don't have to be turned on by the lingerie of our partner? Yeah. That like she could age and change and I can still turn on love and sexual fire in a way that I can bring that to her and find where we meet in that and cultivate it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, if you had to pick, I know there's probably many ways to do it, but like if you had to pick one way to like get that fire back, when it's like, I know a lot of guys, myself included, suffer from like, you know, like kind of like a Madonna whore complex where it's like you have like the mother of your children and it's like, you know, I can't really, that's why you see a lot of guys like going and getting prostitutes and like doing like people that they don't have an emotional connection with, because it's like, I can do whatever I want to you because you're not the mother of my children, you know? There's a weird thing with that. So how would you turn on the fire for a relationship that you feel like is maybe missing some of that?
I do a few things. One is I encourage each of us individually to turn on more fire. So you know that I encourage men to do self-genital massage that actually creates what I call yin arousal. It's not just like watching a porn video and then releasing your seed and getting aroused within 2 minutes and being done. This is slowly building more fire, more blood flow, more energy in your pelvis, in your genitals, in your body. So you basically have more sexual juice on tap in a good way.
Yeah.
And then to be able to generate, our breath and aliveness. So we're generating more aliveness and energy. Second is that I have things I do with couples that like sitting and breathing each other's breath, which is basic tantra type practices where I'm like taking in the smell of your breath, which may not smell good. And I'm letting it in. And I'm letting you receive mine, and I'm creating intimacy through that starts to kind of get us out of our head into our body, and then if we focus our attention on breathing and feeling heart to heart, or feeling, if I can feel my partner's genitals from mine even without touching her, and start to create a bridge or an energy of connection with her, and start to feel like there's a lot of subtle energetics that can start to prime the fire.
Right.
So that's one thing, and that can, and then once we've got stronger connection, intimacy, then we can play around with some role playing and different things that like, hey, I really want to like let myself feel some of these shadow sides of sexuality where I need to have a little bit more of that aggressive fire with you, or that we're playing this out, and we kind of hopefully can create a healthy edge for that. That's kind of more advanced. The other part I really encourage is, you're in your house and you've got kids around and she's making dinner and there's things going on, that you find ways to build sexual tension. And that might be through walking by and brushing down her back and then going and playing with the kids. Yeah. Leaning up into her for a moment and making a little contact. But you could think of it as playing games that engage some connection and start to prime a little bit of fire, so we feel open, and some playfulness, some joking, but basically some exchange of energy, so you're not going from cold to trying to get to hot sexual fire, that you've got some warm play and joking, and even a little bit of sexual dance, a little bit, like you might press up against her pelvis for a moment and take a breath, and she's like, whoa, what are you doing? And you're just like there and you're back playing with the kids. And so I really encourage couples to get creative with contact, with connection, and even like across the room, can I like feel my partner from here? She's 10 feet away. Can I breathe and like sense her body, sense her energy? Remember when it felt good to be inside of her, and like to almost like use my imagination, my body, my energy to feel that connection with her. So I'm starting to engage something, because I believe in energy. I believe in energy exchange. And I think that we can prime a lot of exchanges, start to create a warmer environment for there to be an easeful connection.
Definitely, man. Incredible. I have a lot of homework to do when I get home.
That's some good homework.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
No, but I appreciate you being willing to do this like podcast, and I can't tell you how grateful I am for you. Like, I wish I can put it into words. Just the work that we're doing together, working one-on-one, coming out to these retreats. It's been a game changer for me, man. I really, honestly, I said in the video that I put out that I wish I would have found this work 10 years ago. Scratch that. Wish I would have found it like in the very beginning, you know? Mm-hmm. And I'm forever grateful to you. I really am. So if there's anything that I can ever do for you to help like grow your business, to help like get more awareness out there, to get more people involved with what you're doing, like I'm more than willing to help in any way that I can. Obviously releasing this podcast, I hope a lot of people listen to this and it opens their eyes and their hearts and their minds to the possibilities, you know, of what's possible. So
taking that in, Josh. Thank you. I'm looking in your eyes right now and appreciating that. And I want to pass back over to you too, a similar respect and honor for who you are and where you've come from and the choices you have made and what you're doing with these podcasts and all the men that whoever you're speaking to, men or women, that you're having these sessions with and that you're inviting to be real and honest. And I appreciate how you're holding space. And most of all, I also just appreciate the sincere willingness you have, you know. I see your strength, your power, your gifts, but I also feel this big heart and potency to you. And so I want to honor and celebrate that. And I'm honored by your friendship and our connection as well.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate it, man. Hell yeah. I'm so stoked. Yeah. We're going to get this retreat going. So thank you again. And I look forward to connecting with you more, man.
Thank you, Josh.
All right, Shems.
Thank you for listening to Getting Real with Josh Boyer. If you're loving the podcast, please leave a rating and subscribe. You can follow us on all social media platforms and YouTube at gettingreal_. You can also check us out at joshboyer.com.